take today's episode, we're going to Paris.
And New York.
A transatlantic romance, just what every girl needs.
Absolutely right. The book, of course, is The Paris Seamstress by Natasha Lester. It's a story of a young woman who flees Paris ahead of a Nazi invasion and moves to New York and builds a fashion empire. Have you read it?
Of course. Why would you suggest otherwise?
Why would I suggest otherwise?
It's got everything I love. Food, fashion, adventure,
Romance.
Speaking of food, what are we cooking today?
Lobster mousse with caviar.
Ooh, caviar goes so well with champagne.
Doesn't it? Oh, going to be delicious.
Let's go.
So tonight we are welcoming Natasha Lester to Word of Mouth TV, celebrating her new book, which is called The Paris Seamstress. It's a gorgeous, romantic story of intrigue and danger and love set in France and in the USA during the Second World War. During the book, her heroine, whose name is Estelle, flies back to Paris on a dangerous mission, and they fly on the boat plane, and they have an amazing meal of piping hot soup and smoked salmon and lobster. And so I thought I would recreate that wonderful meal for Natasha tonight. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually making lobster and smoked salmon mousse. Now, I've never made it before, so I'm quite nervous, but I've got a really pretty new mold. And so, as you can see, I've designed the whole set around my lobster mousse mold.
Sarah. Thank you both for having me.
Come on
Looking forward to it.
Yes. This is my house.
Lovely, Kate.
Welcome.
Oh, are we making sidecars?
Yes, sidecars.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yay.
I've got no real idea how to make them. We'll work it out as we go on.
That's right.
Welcome to Word of Mouth TV. Today we're going to interview Natasha Lester, author of The Paris Seamstress, a magnificent novel that spans the globe, half the globe, from Paris to New York to Australia. So, Natasha, it's really lovely to have you here. What inspired you to write The Paris Seamstress?
Oh, quite a few different things, actually. Have you seen the documentary Dior and I about Raf Simons' tenure as creative director
I've heard
at
about
Christian
it.
Dior?
I haven't
Okay,
seen it.
so you have to see it. You would love it, especially. Yeah.
So up our alley.
Yes. So I went to see that documentary, and when I was sitting watching it, I had this incredibly vivid, like vision almost, of a mother and a daughter working together in a Parisian atelier together. And I've never really had anything like that happen to me before, but I didn't have a story. It was just these two people in this location. So I was like, well, what am I going to do with that? So I kind of dismissed it and ignored it. And then it wasn't until a couple of months later I was listening to a podcast. There's a history podcast called the Bowery New York History Podcast, and they had an episode on New York City's garment district and the history of that. Okay. And the podcast spanned like 50 years, but there was just one little part where they talked about the fact that up until the 1940s, every piece of fashion everywhere in the world was a direct copy of a Parisian design. And then once Paris was shut down by the Germans during the Second World War, the rest of the world suddenly had to find its fashion feet and develop its own fashion industry.
And so you had
yes,
your story.
Absolutely. My writerly brain went, oh my God, that's what I'm going to write about. And now that mother and that daughter have got something to do and somewhere to be.
Oh, that opening scene, we loved that scene, didn't we, Sarah?
We did, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so that scene, I was looking through some books on 1940s fashion, and I saw this image of the gold dress in this book, and out of all the different images I looked at, that one was the one that captured my imagination. And so I had this vivid vision of Estella, the main character, in the atelier, getting this bolt of gold silk that she's supposed to be making flowers out of, because her métier is to make the artificial flowers for the haute couture gowns. And instead of sitting down and making the flowers like she's supposed to, she swathes herself in the gold silk and starts dancing around the atelier, and then makes herself that gold dress that I saw in that book that night. So yeah, it was one of those scenes that, again, just kind of came to me. It was wonderful.
I must admit that I love books that move between a period in the past and a period in the present. And yet sometimes I find that I like one story better than the other. One of the things I loved about The Paris Seamstress is that both the stories were really engaging and really really moving.
Oh, thank you, Kay. That's so lovely. It's really funny you should say that, because when I started writing, it was only going to be a historical novel. It wasn't going to be a historical and a contemporary novel. But I wrote myself into the world's worst plot tangle in the historical storyline. I got to 85,000 words and I didn't know how to get myself out of it. So I basically left all my characters on a cliffhanger, put the book down and went, oh my God, I don't know what to do with it. Went to Paris and New York, did lots of research and came back and hoped I would be able to, hope my mind would have somehow come up with a solution to untangle it. And it didn't. And then I went to Adelaide, of all places, on a plane. I watched a documentary about Tiffany & Co, the jewellery store. Got to Adelaide, went to bed that night in the hotel. I was speaking at the RWA conference the next day. Woke up at 3 a.m. with this visions of scenes, just running, so many scenes running through my mind, and they were set in contemporary times. And Estella's granddaughter was a character, and until then Estella didn't have a granddaughter, so she'd suddenly appeared. And this man who was the creative director of Tiffany & Co, so obviously he'd come from the documentary I'd been watching from the plane. And I was thinking, this is just mad, you can't have these ideas. But I couldn't go back to sleep, so I got up and I wrote them all down, thinking I'll look at them in the morning and they'll just be rubbish. Got up in the morning and thought, oh, actually I don't mind this. And then I realised that by writing this contemporary storyline, I could unravel all the plot tangles I got myself into.
Isn't it amazing how creativity works? For all of you out there that have got writer's block, all you need to do is fly to Paris, New York and Adelaide.
That's right.
And all your problems will be solved.
Make sure you watch a Tiffany documentary on the way.
Do you take photographs of yourself in your vintage clothes and post them looking glamorous and gorgeous on Instagram?
I have started a new Instagram account called My Year of Vintage, where I do post pictures of what I've bought and also pictures that I've taken on my research at different museums like the Met and the Musée des Arts Décoratifs and that sort of thing, of beautiful gowns. So it's my indulgence Instagram account.
Oh, well, I have to say these sidecars are so delicious, but they're rather wicked. Do you think we should maybe go downstairs and have something to eat?
That's probably a good idea.
We have too much. Come on down.
Okay. I'll lead the way.
Come on down. as you can see, I have cooked a delicious feast for you here, Natasha. So we have lobster mousse with smoked salmon and prawns, and with some salmon caviar. This meal that I planned for you tonight was inspired, of course, by the scene where Estelle is flying to Paris in danger on the boat plane. So I want us to all imagine that we are flying to Paris right now. We all love Paris, don't we?
We do.
Any excuse
Yes.
to go to Paris.
Any excuse to go to Paris.
Yes.
So
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
To the Paris Seamstress and to your new book, The Wedding Photographer. Was it?
Yeah.
The French photographer for next year. Next year.
I can. All right, let's have a little go. So you, of course, got to go to Paris when you were researching the book.
I
didn't you?
did, which was a terrible thing to have to do.
How you suffer for your
I
art.
know, exactly. No, my husband always says that I choose places to set my books in based on where I want to travel to
My
next.
husband says exactly the same
And I always
thing.
say, why wouldn't you? Yes. So one of the things I wanted to do while I was there was to go and visit an atelier. I had a guide take me to an atelier where they make the artificial flowers for the haute couture gowns, and this atelier has been there for hundreds of years. Many of the seamstresses have been working there for decades, and the process of making these flowers is so intricate and so involved, and it's a real art. And I mean, if you've seen a Chanel or a Christian Dior and they've got all the little flowers on them, like I'd never really thought about how were the flowers
me
made
either.
and how do they get on the dresses. You don't. And then you see how it works, and they've got all these amazing heavy iron cutter tools that they've been made for, they've had those tools for centuries, and the fabric that they stretch and stiffen, and then they stamp out the petals and make these amazing creations. And it's a real labour of love, and it's so intensive, such intensive work. And to sit there and watch them for a whole morning was just the most fantastic experience of my life. The things you get to do when you're researching a book,
I know,
you would
it's
never
wonderful.
otherwise do that.
Natasha, I would really love to ask you about your creative processes. It's one of the things I'm always fascinated by is how other writers work.
Well, my writing process is very chaotic. I'm so organised in everything else I do in my life, and I've always imagined I would be an organised writer. But every time I try and plan and outline before I write, it just never works. It doesn't go anywhere. I can't think of what I'm going to write about, because for me, when I'm sitting down to write, literally all I'm thinking of is I'm going to write about Estella in the 1940s wanting to have an atelier of her own one day. That's all I have about the story, nothing else. And so it's just a page by page discovery.
But I think that's how most writers work. I think of it as being a journey of discovery.
Yes.
And you follow, often you can only discover your story by telling it.
Yes, exactly.
And you have to trust to the creative process. As you're writing, something will happen, and you have no idea why it's there.
Yep.
And then a year later, you work out that's why I needed
Yeah,
that
that's
scene.
right, exactly.
So,
yeah.
I think that's a perfectly natural
Yeah.
and beautiful and intuitive way to write.
It is actually, and I really enjoy it because it means that if I get a surprise in what I'm writing, then hopefully the reader will too.
Yeah, I was just saying, so what is the best part of writing for you?
Having finished. No, it's not actually. No, so for me, the best part is about 50,000 words into the first draft, because I've got enough words behind me that I know what the story is, and I'm so excited and so immersed and engrossed that literally my fingers can't type fast enough for my brain, which is thinking the story. I love that.
When
Yeah.
everything is just coming effortlessly.
Yes,
when you're
yes,
plotting, when you're-
yes.
when you're going,
I call
what
it the
am I going to do
golden
next?
flow.
Yes.
When you're in the golden
Absolutely,
flow. And
absolutely.
It's so joyous and
It
effortless.
is, it
And
is.
then when you're not in the golden flow.
It's like, how can I get that back? Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us as well. I hope that you've had as much fun as we have had tonight. And come and join us next time. Cheers.
Cheers. Hi, here we are again for another Word of Mouth TV soundbite. This is when we ask our authors to recommend the best book that they've read lately. And today we have Natasha Lester, author of The Paris Seamstress, who's come to share her gems of wisdom with us. So, Natasha, what's the best book that you've read lately?
The best book I've read recently is The Sisters' Song by Louise Allen. Louise is a fellow Perth author, and The Sisters' Song is set in the 20s and 30s, and it's about two sisters, Nora and Ida. And what I loved most about this book is their relationship and the way that the book treats deals with the way women's lives were at that time and how hard they were and how awful the things they had to go through, but there's still that beautiful vein of hope that runs through the story. I was absolutely sobbing my eyes out by the end of this book. So yes, I can definitely recommend it, but with a box of tissues.
I love that book as well.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
I had the pleasure of launching it, so yeah, it was wonderful. It was such a beautiful night to be there at launching an author's first book. It's very special.
So the best book that I have read in recent weeks is called A Skin Full of Shadows by Frances Harding. It's quite a difficult book to categorise. I would call it dark, magical, historical fiction for teenagers. It's set during the English Civil War, and the heroine, her name is Makepeace. But she is born into a family that has the power to carry ghosts within them, and she inadvertently becomes haunted by the ghost of a bear. And her struggle is to save herself and the bear, because her ability makes her very powerful for those who wish to work harm in the English reign. It's astonishingly book, original, dark, incredibly moving, and Frances Harding is, I think, one of the most interesting authors writing for young people today.
My daughter would love that. I'm going to recommend that to her. Frances Harding, right, excellent.
I love
Thank
Frances
you, Kate. Perfect.
Yes, and the book that I'm going to recommend today, it's one that I've always wanted to read. There's often a lot of classics that I'd love to read, but I never have. I was just walking through the bookshop and I saw a copy of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. It's a very difficult name to pronounce.
I think you did it beautifully.
And I can't tell you how beautiful. It's a very beautiful, beautiful novella of sorts. So I won't tell you what it's about, because to tell you what it's about would probably spoil it a little bit. It's so short that to give away too much gives away nearly all. But I can't recommend this highly. It's gorgeous. Really beautiful.
And I just need to say that part of my wedding service was a poem out of that book.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. There you go.
It was a long time ago.
Yes, it's an amazing book.
So the cookbook that I want to recommend this week is called The French Farmhouse Cookbook by Susan Herman Loomis. And she's an American who moved to France and lived in France for many, many years, and went around and collected recipes from all her friends and all the people that she met. It's a wonderfully earthy and real cookbook. I really love cooking out of it because the meals are just the sort of thing that you need when you've had a long day working and you've got to cook for 3 children, and you just throw something together. It's very natural and spontaneous, and the food is always fabulous. So this is my recommendation for this week.
So I brought along the Australian Women's Weekly's Sweet Old Fashioned Favourites, which is a very old cookbook. In fact, it was my husband's mother's cookbook, and we use it all the time with the kids, especially because a lot of the recipes are very easy and the kids can make them by themselves, and it's got all the classic things in there like ginger nut biscuits and caramel slices and bakewell tarts and lemon meringue pies and everything that everyone loves and is yummy, and most importantly easy to make, because I'm not the world's best cook, but I can cook anything from here.
My book for today is The Two Fat Ladies, Full Throttle. Now these cook authors need no introduction. They were on a television series, a BBC television series many, many years ago. And the recipes are just great. They're full of cream, very British types of recipes generally. Fish, eggs, cream, butter, that sort of stuff. And they're easy to make, and they're the two cooks both write forwards for the recipe, so it's entertaining as well. Clarissa Dixon Wright, one of her great quotes was "Never trust a thin cook," and I think that's
good advice. Yeah,
good advice. And Jennifer Patterson said, "Let's eat what God gave us."
Oh, yes.
God gave us butter
and lobster
And champagne.
and champagne. Thanks for joining us.
And if you want to enter our giveaway,
Or know more about our fantastic prizes,
or try any of our delicious recipes,
or check out our news, views and reviews,
then just go to our website at wordofmouthtv.com.au.
see you next time.